Hi, on Foster Denovo Talks, this episode, we speak to Chris Thomas, our Head of Investment Management.
Chris talks about the four aspects of his role: partner development, proposition development, investment committee, and the investment team.
We didn't agree on it 100%. There is a good 50 to 75% of it that we're thinking, that's actually a nugget there, we can use that. How do we blend that then with other ideas that we've come across? We begin with the end in mind. What is this thing for? Would Nikos want be able to advise a client this, whatever this thing is? If the answer to that is no, it doesn't even get anywhere else. Partner development really is a sort of investment narrative coach, is probably the best way to describe it.
It's a fantastic episode, so do check it out. Hi Chris, thanks very much for joining us. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Great. So, Chris, we have seen you on lots of videos talking about dynamic portfolios, investment management, all that sort of stuff. But we've never really asked the actual question, what does Chris Thomas do as a job? So would you just talk us through what your actual role at Foster Denovo is?
To be honest, Helen, I thought you were going to answer the question for me, but I will answer it.
Oh, well, I can if you want, but I'd like you to make sure that you know what you do.
Yeah, good question. My job title is Head of Investments, which is a particularly bland, meaningless title, really. Foster Denovo Group has three types of investments. They have model portfolios, they have OICs, and they have workplace pensions. So ultimately, I'm responsible for the design and management and distribution of those products. That's it. Okay.
And if we looked at your role, though, because I work with you closely and Nikos works with you a lot, right? So there's sort of different parts of your roles, isn't there? So yes. If I was looking at it, I would say partner development is massive in what you do. Yep. Okay, and we work super closely on that. I'd say proposition.
Yep.
What else would I say? Investment committees, I would say, is another big one. And then I suppose the investment team. Yep. So if we sort of take those in order, talk to us about partner development. It's a massive question, isn't it? Partner development.
Yeah, we've only got 2 hours for the podcast, so I'll keep it brief.
We haven't.
Partner development really is a sort of investment narrative coach, is probably the best way to describe it.
I've never heard you describe it like that, but okay, carry on.
Yeah, I thought the brand today. No, but it is a coaching thing more than anything else. And like all good sportsmen, whether rugby or football, the players themselves are pretty good at what they do. But there's a reason why there's a manager, and that person is to provide the extra 1%. Can't believe I've just quoted Clive Woodward, but the reality is that...
We knew it was coming.
Yeah, I know, yeah. Yeah, that's not mentioned, isn't it? But the reason that 1% is important is because it creates a difference to how they articulate the proposition to clients. They know what they're doing. They know how to advise. They know what's good for their clients. It's a sounding board, and it's a, but have you thought about this? And over the last 20 years, really, it's become its worth weight in gold, really, in fairness. So that's what the development means.
Okay. And you've been on the receiving end of this, haven't you, Nick?
I have indeed. Receiving end.
Right, so,
I'm a giver. I'm a giver.
Okay, lovely. And let's bring it back in the room. So talk us through, how Chris helped you through your development from when you first joined us over, nearly 7 years ago now.
Well, other than reminding me that I'm a younger version of himself frequently, I would say that where Chris really helps is to formulate the narrative with a client. So especially when it comes to investment context, I think investment is a very huge word that means many different things to many different people. And I think it's sitting down and understanding where a client is in their world of what an investment means and helping bring context to where we actually add value, what we advise on and what we really don't do as financial advisors, really helping, I suppose, segregate the role between an advisor and a fund manager, so to speak, is where you've really helped me in how to articulate that effectively with clients. Okay. It's been really helpful.
Good. You're welcome.
That's all right.
And I think, we've got varying levels of sort of partners in the company, haven't we? So we've got guys that come through the academy and they've just had their exams, etc., and they've maybe never had, a first meeting with a client or anything like that, or talked about propositions. Then we've got senior partners who know lots of things. I've actually put you in that category in my mind. So, how is the development different for the different types of partners that we have?
Yeah, great question. The newer partners It's far more comprehensive, holistic. It's more about fact-finding, actually, rather than investments. It's just reminding them that their job is to draw out opinions from the clients before providing them answers. And it's how to shape those questions. So that's the initial development part. As they get more experience and actually, frankly, get more clients in the investment and pension space, it then moves into the narrative that Nikos was describing. It then becomes more of I've got this £100,000 pension, what do I do with it? Until you get to that point, it's more about the financial planning bit in more detail. So it's learning questioning techniques for them, so they don't just copy what I say. I want them to adopt what I say, but then translate it, as it were, into their own narrative. So that's the important difference between the newer advisors and more senior partners, is that they know how to do that, the senior partners, but it's the sounding board, as I mentioned, in regarding the narrative to do the investments.
And I suppose the sort of third tranche of that, which I just thought about, is, acquisitions. We've done, 7 in the last couple of years, and obviously they've all got their own investment propositions and that sort of stuff. So how is that experience trying to talk them? Because obviously we're restricted. And so talking through that with them and explaining it.
Yeah, it's firstly understanding what their proposition is, rather than just on a surface level. What is their proposition and why do they devise it? Because by understanding that, you'll understand the emotion. If you just try and say, mine's better than yours, you're going to lose the argument. You need to understand what's motivated them to have their investment proposition the way that it is. And that goes with existing partners, actually, not just acquisition partners. If you understand why they've designed what they've got and why they recommend it, you try and get common ground as quickly as possible. If you can get common ground, then when the disagreements happen, which will be inevitable, Nikos and I have had them, okay? Those disagreements become more of a coaching subject as opposed to I'm right, you're wrong. It is more about, I've got your interests at the heart. We've agreed on the good bits. Well, why do you think I disagree on this then? But if you go in straight the disagreement, you don't get the point over.
And as somebody that sort of heads up or manages our investment propositions, I suppose, how would you actually go about developing a new proposition, say at Foster Denovo?
Yeah, so one of the things that make us distinct is that we have partners, advisors on our investment committee. And we also have attendees. We go to the gallery, as you know, Nikos. And that's an important distinction between us and other businesses. It doesn't mean that financial advisors with us make investment fund decisions. They don't. But us not having direct input from them and in turn their clients means we're missing out on really good intel. What are clients thinking? Why are they concerned? Are they worried about what Trump's doing? Are they concerned about Gaza? All those things that the geopolitical stuff impact investments. We need to understand why that's upsetting clients, because that's the word I'd use. How does that translate into investments? And how does that translate into financial planning? Without the input from advisors, we don't know that. So in answer to your question, we have a pretty good idea what the market's doing, whether we're ahead, behind, or roughly in the middle. We then filter that with the feedback from clients and partners. So we've got a proposition developing at the moment, which we're calling, the working title is DP Fusion. And in part, Nikos, you were the inspiration, the star inspiration of
proud
that.
face right now, yeah.
Humble.
And in fact, you were sitting in the chair where you discussed it. But that idea, although we didn't agree on it 100%, there is a good 50 to 75% of it that we're thinking, that's actually a nugget there. We can use that. How do we blend that then with other ideas that we've come across? And that makes us, helps us ensure that the proposition certainly remains ahead of the competition. So that's one of the ways. The second way is that, I can't believe I'm saying this, but Declan and I have been in this industry 65 years between the two of us. That's when you're supposed to say you don't look old enough, by the way.
Oh, sorry.
Still not said it though.
Yeah,
No, I know. It's that, yeah. Shocker.
Very silent.
Yeah. So, and we've got lots of contacts, so we understand what's going on in the market, and some of it we just ignore, and some of it we don't.
So you've talked about investment committees, right? And it's quite a big thing for us, and I've been to them. I did like the lunch. I don't want to dress that up. But, we all go to the investment committee. So talk to us.
I do as well.
Yeah, it's quite good. But talk to us about why they're important, which ones we hold, and how you do them. Because there's quite a few of them now, right? And that's a big part of your role.
Yeah, there are. From a Foster Denovo group standpoint, we have three formal investment committees. We have the Foster Denovo Investment Committee itself, which is responsible for the dynamic portfolio range. We have the Sequel Investment Committee, which is responsible for the Sequel OICs. And we also have a Workplace Pension Investment Committee, which is responsible for the, you've guessed it, workplace pensions.
Right, wow.
Amazing, that, isn't
Yeah.
it? So those three investment committees are, as it says on the tin, there are attendees to those meetings. There's discussions about what the investment should look like, how have they performed, are they achieving benchmark. We get external macro feedback from external experts who contribute and critique what we do. So the format of those are fairly similar, but they are for three different subjects.
Yeah.
We also, since we've acquired some businesses, we have their investment committees. Now, those investment committees are run by them, whereas Declan and I sit in a way similar to the gallery that we have. So we're guests effectively at those committees.
So these committees are what they had pre-Foster Denovo. So if they had, let's say, an MPS or something like that, they would have their own investment committee. And then you guys, as you say, go in as a sort of viewer.
Yeah, we
viewer sounds odd.
Yeah,
but,
no, yeah.
Okay.
And clearly we're as quiet as you'd expect us to be as a viewer.
Okay.
Yeah, irony there, clearly. But no, we sit on those committees as observers. Now, of course, it's slightly more formal than it was perhaps with them before, because even though they're making the advisory decisions as to whether they're choosing Fund A or Fund B, they're a little bit more on their mettle, in fairness, because in fairness, Declan's a CFA qualified investment expert. So they've got to know their onions, because if they say something that is slightly ambiguous, you can guarantee Declan will make that clear. So our job really is to, supervise is probably not the right word because it has a different connotation, but it's there just to make sure it runs the way it should do. It's not our job to make the fund management decisions because it's still their proposition. And most of those propositions are advisory. So therefore it's an advised proposition, which means that if they're doing something to change, the client has to give consent. So they perform that as advisors. But the fundamentals are very similar. We have Fund A, we want to change Fund B, why are you doing that? And we sort of supervise and monitor that.
Yeah.
We also provide counsel, especially some of the guys in the north. They ask our opinions on certain funds. And there's a line we try not to cross, because I can imagine them saying, well, Chris said, which is fine, but that's not our role in that particular meeting.
Is it fine, not fine? Is that what?
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. English foreign language don't understand it. But no, we don't want them using us as a reason for doing something. They've got to argue the case themselves. If we then support that, then fine. But we want them making their decision because it's their proposition. Going back to what I said at the beginning, we want to understand the emotional motivation about why they run the money the way they do. We don't want to interfere in that, because if we're beginning to interfere, well, they might as well have the DPs.
Yeah.
And what would you say in terms of how does the whole team support Foster Denovo's investment approach, sort of generally across the board?
Yeah, so we have 4 members of the team, including myself, 5 in about a month. And the division really is split into 2 departments, effectively. There's design, marketing, and development, which sort of sits under my remit. And then you have the technical and the analysis, which sits under Declan's remit. Now, Declan and I have a daily briefing, that's including the title, it happens every day. And that meeting is to ensure that those 2 departments effectively are singing from the same hymn sheet. Declan and I generally don't agree, which actually is a good thing, because what it does, it draws out the opposite view. So even if we do agree, we take as the phrase in journalism goes, the op-ed position to make sure that we're drawing out, make all the points that should be covered. So ultimately, the decisions of how we make investment propositions sit between the both of us. But in terms of the proposition design, I have the casting vote. In terms of fund management design, Declan has the casting vote. And ultimately, we'll go back to the previous question about how we design propositions. We begin with the end in mind. So what is this thing for? Would Nikos be able to advise a client this, whatever this thing is? If the answer to that is no, it doesn't even get anywhere else. If the answer to that is yes or yes possible, then we then backfill all the stuff that needs to be done, such as design and process.
Fine. And what direction do you see the investment propositions move in sort of over the next few years?
Yeah, so DP Fusion is definitely a project we're working on. And what DP Fusion will try and do, it will hone in on the areas where active management is successful. It'll hone in on the areas where index investment is successful. And it'll also develop, which is your idea, at the top end of the risk scale, a very specific, we'll call it a higher risk investment, but we need to be clear on what that target market is. But ultimately, that's where we see the proposition, not developing is probably the wrong word, but in addition to what we've got now. There is sustainable and ESG investing, which has taken a bit of a kick in the last 2 or 3 years for reasons that is not its fault. So we're holding our nerve on that, but because we definitely believe that ultimately, because of domestic energy security reasons, i.e. Britain should have its own wind farms generating 75% of its electricity or whatever the numbers should be, the future for ESG investing is very rosy. It's just at the moment, because of the more geopolitical reasons, it's challenging. So SDPs, as we call them, the ESG part, definitely to progress on that. We also will start looking at some other areas of what we're describing for the minute as a family office. So where you have uber wealthy clients, families per se, we look at developing a proposition for that. It's likely that they will be OICs as opposed to MPS, but that's just initial thoughts.
And what about outside of Foster Denovo? If you had to sort of crystal ball, what's going to happen in the next 5 years in wealth management from a proposition perspective, do you think it's different to what you've just described, or have we just started early?
I think we've started early.
Okay.
And the bit I think we've started early on is the active passive discussion. We're agnostic on those investment styles, but we believe that they are better used in certain asset types. That theme will become a very major part of our proposition going forward. I think that the industry will recognize that in their own right because the stats support it. So that will also help active managers carve out a part of the investment industry where they're probably not targeting right now. They're trying to be all things to all people, and they get hammered by index funds such as US and so forth. That's not their place. Their place should be more boutique, more specific asset types. That's where I believe active management will take. And actually, it may even drive higher fees because the level of human interaction and human skill you need at that point will require very clever people. Therefore, that comes with bigger fees. The opposite is true, of course. In asset types where active management isn't required, well, index funds will probably go lower. So that's how we're starting that development, and I can see that following out in the industry. If, of course, the industry isn't based upon ego, and which, of course, is the biggest understatement and stupid comment I've said today. But if they actually recognize, if they take their ego away from it and recognize where those investment styles are best placed, then they'll follow that.
Okay. If in doubt, ChatGPT.
Very true, mate. Yes.
I was going to say at the end of this, to wrap it up, has anyone got any pearls of wisdom? And what we've just heard is, if in doubt, ChatGPT, and if ego doesn't get in the way.
Yeah.
So I think on that note, we should end this. But thank you for your time, Chris.
Perfect. Thanks, guys.